Asif, how are you?
Alaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah. Well, how you guys doing?
Alhamdulillah. Good.
Here, man.
So, this is a podcast we're doing, and you're a lawyer, correct?
That's right.
You're studying law.
Yes.
And you're a Muslim.
Alhamdulillah.
So we thought we'd choose a topic that kind of matched, like, that going on, seeing, like, what you do for work. And so we thought we'd choose a topic that could relate to you. So, enough of the chit-chat. Let's start. We have a question. So, our first question is, do you think that real justice comes from society making laws or from Islam's laws? Because if you were to think about it, Islam's laws have not been updated for like thousands of years.
Okay.
They've been the same. But society's laws, they've been updated to like change the world. So doesn't it seem like society's laws would match more to this world?
Okay, that's an interesting question. And you have a interesting take on it, as in there's a presumption that newer is better, and that is often the presumption. People often presume that newer things are better. Therefore, you have iPhone 10, iPhone 11, iPhone 16 is better than iPhone 10, right? We'll tackle that in a bit, but before we could get into that, right? Even the notion of Islamic law is outdated. We'll talk about that. Okay, we'll get into that. But what I want to talk about first is, you mentioned justice. What is justice? How would you define justice?
Define it as like someone doing something for a wrongdoing that has been done.
Okay.
And that action that is being taken, it prevents it from happening again because of some law that is implemented.
Okay, interesting. You know, the justice, it's a bit hard to define, because you can get into this notion of what is justice. It could become subjective if you take God out of the picture, right? In fact, people can't even define justice without referring or anchoring justice to God, actually. Let's do a quick program, okay? Let's do a quick study. Okay, let me pull up Google, okay? And I'll ask Google to define justice. All right. So you guys can read from you can read this for me. Who wants to read it for me? Okay.
Justice is a behavior or treatment, a concern for justice, peace, and genuine respect for people.
Okay. So justice is just behavior or treatment. So how do you define justice? Justice is just behavior and treatment. Okay. Now define just. Okay, you tell me justice is being just. What is just? Okay, let's look up. Define just. Look at that. Based on or behaving according to what is morally right and fair. Okay. What is morally? Define right. Okay, let's define right. Define right. Morally good, justified. Morally good, justified. Okay.
Now define good.
Define good.
Yeah.
Define good. Okay. To be desired or approved of. You see where we started off trying to define justice and where we are. See, a normal person, if you were to have a discussion on the definition of justice, most people will not be able to define what is justice, because it goes back to what is morally right and wrong. Well, what is morally right and wrong? Who gets to decide what is right and what is wrong? Because if you were to go back in time to Germany, right, and ask them what you're doing, is this right or wrong? They'll try and justify it. They'll say this is right, and they'll have their justification for it, right? If you go to what's happening in Gaza, Allah liberate the people of Gaza, Allah grant them victory, Ameen. If you were to ask the oppressors, right, they would justify their actions. They would say what they're doing is just and it's right. And that's what they've been doing. They've been trying to justify, right? Now, what is right and what is wrong, unless you anchor it back to Allah, you can't really, who gets to decide what is right and wrong, right? Who gets to decide what is right or what is wrong? The only way to define right and wrong is through Allah, because you need objective morality. if you do not have objective morality, everybody will give their subjective opinion on what is right and what is wrong. You guys with me so far on this?
Yeah.
People will give their own subjective, like the Israelis will say, this is right, what we're doing is right because we have the right to exist and we have the right to defend ourselves and yada 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 and this and that and all this nonsense, Although those arguments can be debunked, right? But then again, if you were to step back a little bit, and if you were to take God out of the picture, nobody can claim what they stand for is right or wrong. Because everything would be subjective. You need God to anchor your morals into, and then that's how you would define what is right and wrong, and that's how you would define justice. Now, interestingly enough, Allah talks in the Quran, He says in the Quran, لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلُنَا بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانَ لِيَقُومَ النَّاسَ بِالْقِسْطِ. That the prophets were sent with the book and the mizan, a scale. You guys know what a scale is, right?
Yeah.
So you have, back in India or Pakistan or elsewhere. I mean, people used to use scales back in the days too, right? So back in the days, if you wanted to buy something, let's say a tomato or apple, whatever, right? You would put them on one side of the scale, and the scale would just go down, and then you would put weights on the other side, and you would try and balance it out. So let's say if you put 5 kilos of weight on this side, and you have 5 kilos of apples on this side, then it will balance out. And that is balanced, right? The Quran is using the imagery of this balance. The prophets were sent with the book and the mizan to do what? To bring that balance, to do what? To implement justice amongst mankind. لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلُنَا بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانَ لِيَقُومَ النَّاسَ بِالْقِسْطِ. To establish justice amongst people. In a different place, Allah talks about the origins of humanity, how humanity started off. كَانَ النَّاسُ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا. Long time ago, humanity was one. فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ النَّبِيِّينَ وَمُبَشِّرِينَ وَمُنذِرِينَ. Something happened, and then we were no longer one. And then the prophets were sent with good glad tidings, and the ayah continues towards the end. And one of the reasons why the prophets were sent with this book is because people were بَغْيًا بَيْنَهُمْ. They would transgress amongst each other. You get it? So this is what the prophets were sent with. This is what the Quran came with. Now, our justice, our concept of justice, it is objective. Therefore, it's not changing. You talked about changing, right? Therefore, it's not changing. You guys with me so far?
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
So basically, you're saying that if two people have a different system of justice, then who we do know who's right, whose justice system is right. But for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an infinite mind, so obviously His...
That's exactly what I'm trying to get to. That Allah, look, when Allah created, mankind, before mankind, the universe, right? It is logically, any person with a logical, sound mind would come to the conclusion that Allah, therefore, is unlimited. Because you cannot have limited things depending upon other limited things. If you were to have limited things depending upon other limited things, you would end up in a
loop. You just keep going.
Yeah, you would just keep going backwards. You would have an infinite regress, right? Therefore, there has to be an unlimited entity or being.
At the end of that chain.
Yeah, that breaks the chain. Therefore, logically speaking, if you have limited things depending upon other limited things, it will cause an infinite regress, which is a logical contradiction. Infinite regress does not exist in this actual world. Therefore, it's logically plausible it's logically necessary for Allah to be unlimited. If Allah is unlimited in knowledge, in wisdom, in knowing what we don't even know. It's interesting, and I was going to bring this up actually. There is a part of the universe that is observable, that we can see. And then there are parts of the universe which are unobservable. You cannot see them. Because the universe it's expanding, right?
Every day.
It's expanding every single day. And there are parts of the universe that is expanding at the speed of light. Faster than the speed of light, actually. And you guys know how we depend upon light to see things. Right? We depend upon light to see things. If the universe it's expanding faster than the speed of light, that means the light cannot reach us. Therefore, we cannot observe parts of the universe. Right? if you were to live on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever without dying, we would still not be able to comprehend and observe those parts of the universe. There's a part of the universe that's observable that we can see and comprehend and whatnot. But the parts of the universe you and I cannot even if you were to live on forever, we would not be able to comprehend. This is the limit of a human, right? This is what a human being is. It's a limited creature with limited knowledge, with limited understanding of the world. An average person lives about 60, 70 years, right? How is a person who lives for 60, 70 years, who hasn't been around since the dawn of humanity, be able to implement a system which is just, which brings about that balance between two parties? It's humanly impossible. You can. It's humanly impossible. And that's when you realize the importance of anchoring your morals, your system, and the need to... It's necessary for a human, in order for you to be just, it's necessary for a human to anchor their understanding of justice, their understanding of right and wrong, back to Allah. You guys taking that in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a lot to comprehend, but like once you get it,
cool.
it's like...
Yeah, it's pretty neat stuff. Unfortunately, we don't think about things like this too often, because we're too busy.
And our 6, 7, and that.
Yeah, or with we're busy with our 9 to 5, or with our games, or this is why the Quran talks about contemplating, sitting in seclusion and just contemplating. That's why the Quran tells us to look upon the universe and do tadabbur and contemplate and think about Allah, right? When we do that, you come to the conclusion. We live in cities, back in the days when the Arabs, when there were no cities around. When there were no cities around, you could see the stars and whatnot. So you had the time to contemplate. There were no distractions. There were no PS4s. There were no iPhones, no Instagram. Nowadays, people are just glued to their screen, Back in the days, people would just look around. There's nothing to do. So you just look around and you just contemplate. You think about Allah. The story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Who would just look to the sky. This is what people used to do back in the day. So let's go back to your question. So what was your question again?
It was where does real justice come from? Like really, Islam or society?
Okay.
And like I gave you the elaboration because like society laws change every so often, and they change to match with the world. Islam's laws have been the same for probably thousands of years.
Okay.
So then that's when you started talking.
I wouldn't say thousands of years. Okay, so let's talk about this for a bit. Okay, firstly, let's understand, you mentioned the laws of society, the modern laws which are coming from a limited human. They are constantly changing. And I recall from my first year in law school, I believe it was the Introduction to the Legal Systems course, right? The book and the professor actually talked about how laws change based on what society think is right and wrong. You get it. Laws change. Exactly. Like, for example, let's get a little bit controversial here, okay? The LGBT laws today, right? They've made it legal today, right? And there's nothing wrong with saying this, by the way. We stand for what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
What the community, what they're standing for, the practices that they're doing, it's completely immoral, it's wrong. And there's no problem with saying that, right? So the LGBT community, they've worked towards making same-sex marriage legalized, right? And that happened due to the change in public opinion. So they worked on changing public opinion. They made it morally acceptable within society. They played the victim, right? And eventually the laws had to change to accommodate that public opinion, right? Therefore, if one thing is wrong today, that will be right tomorrow. Something that's right today will be wrong tomorrow. And that's what's been going on with our society, the modern society. For past couple hundred years, for past couple centuries, they have been trying to play around with laws, play around with systems to accommodate their desires. You guys with me?
Yeah, no, that's the problem.
That is
the desires aren't going to be right, morally right most of the time.
Exactly. And that, if you take Allah out of the picture, back in the days as well, there are many movements, that try to bring about justice based on their limited mind. And one of the movements was the Mani movement, the Manichaetes. This person came up with a movement. Nonetheless, I don't want to get into too much of this, but again, he tried to solve the problems of society by using his limited mind, and he made he made up a bunch of things, right? One of them had to do with marriage, and then he would say there's no need to get married, right? And people would not get married, and that caused a lot of other issues, and that's what's going on. Every movement that you can think of today is a reaction to the ills of society. So, for example, back in the days, women would not get their rights.
Like they couldn't vote and like.
Exactly, they couldn't vote and stuff. Voting and stuff, to be honest, okay, I don't want to get in. I'm not gonna say it's right or I'm not saying it's right. There are issues with whatever. I don't want to get into it right now because we have limited time as well. I don't want to get into it, but let's just talk about it from a neutral perspective. I'm not getting into right and wrong right now, but the women, they had to go through whatever. They were ill-treated, by the way. I'm not saying they were not ill-treated. They were ill-treated back in the days, right? As a reaction, we had the feminist movement, right? The feminists, they came out and they did whatever they did, right? And as a reaction to the feminists, now we have the red pill movement. As a reaction, there's going to be a next bunch of chain reactions to this, right? And this is what the movements are. It's just a reaction to another movement.
These movements are just going to go back and forth?
Exactly, they're just going to go back and forth. Unless if you anchor everything back to Allah. If everybody has to agree upon this, look, we have to determine what is right and wrong. And you and I are very limited in knowledge, in our understanding, in our comprehension. But there is an entity, and we can prove this. There is evidence that the existence of God can be proven through rational evidence. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the Prophet of Allah. That can be proven through rational evidence. The Quran was sent by the Prophet, and the Quran was sent by Allah, and it was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. That can be rationally be proven as well. If we get into it, if we get into the discussion, it can actually be rationally be proven. Now, going back to what you mentioned about Islamic law being static, right?
Yeah.
For thousands of years, right? Well, if you're talking about the Sharia, the Sharia that was given to the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, that came into effect 1,400 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be thousands of years, but different prophets were sent with different legal codes, right? And the prophets implemented that for their people, for their time, and for their place. However, Islam was sent for all of humanity until the day of Qiyamah, right? Now, there are parts of Islam which are clear-cut, right? They're muhkam, right? Muhkam. There is nobody can debate them. Nobody has the right to have a difference of opinion in certain legal codes that Islam has prescribed. But then there are aspects of Islam which Allah has left up to us to determine. Now, it's not for us to determine if it's right or wrong based on our desires. We still have to anchor it back to the Quran and Sunnah. For example, Bitcoin, if it's halal or not, right? I can't just say Bitcoin's halal because I feel like it, right? It has to go back to the Quran and Sunnah. But there are gray areas where Allah has left it open for us, right? So there are muhkam ayahs and muhkam legal codes, and then there are mutashabihat, right? And that's left open for differences of opinion and stuff like that, right? So again, yes, there are aspects of Islamic law, Islamic Sharia, which is static. It does not change, and it cannot change. But then there are aspects of Islamic law which has a little bit more leeway. You guys understand? And it's up to the scholars, the lawyers, and the professors to decide, and the judges to decide. That's what an alim is. An alim is a lawyer, in Islamic lawyer, yeah, or a Muslim lawyer, or a judge, or a qadi, or even
someone in like higher power with like.
Well, back in the days, look, when the Prophet of Allah ﷺ, when he established the city of Medina, right? Who came into these positions that we could label them as Ministry of Education, or the Minister of Education, or the Minister of Agriculture, and this and that? It was the Sahabas. The treasurer, it was the Sahabas who came into these positions, right? And then there were some ulama amongst the Sahabas. Not every Sahabi was an alim, by the way. There were fuqaha amongst the Sahabas, right? Who would pass on rulings and stuff. So they were the judges. You guys with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So I hope that answers the question. So
Yeah.
yeah, I hope that answers the question.
So next, I want to ask a little bit something connected to that maybe. Some people, they would say the Islamic system is, way too strict and unfair. So, I want you to, justify this.
Okay. I'm not going to justify it. Justify
No,
to justify it would mean that it's wrong and we're trying to justify it, right?
Yeah,
I get what you're saying,
yes.
though. I get what you're saying, though. Okay, so let's dive into that a bit now. So repeat the question again. It's strict. You said it's unfair.
Some people would say the Islamic justice system is too strict. For example, the cutting of the hand. People would say that is, just inhumane. That it's crazy to do that. So, I want you to...
Okay, so let's understand this for a bit, right? Islam, the Sharia, it's not a source of law. It's not just a bunch of legal codes that you just implement. The Islamic system, or the Islamic justice system, is actually a paradigm. A Sharia it's a paradigm, right? It comes from the Aqidah. So laws are any law actually, not just Islamic law. Any law that you can think of, it's based upon an Aqidah. It's based upon a belief. For example, in today's time, liberalism is, you could say, the deen of the prevalent system that's enforced upon today's world, okay? As per liberalism, if I was to define liberalism in a nutshell, if I was to put it in a nutshell, liberalism states that you're free to do whatever you want as long as you don't harm the next person, right? And this is what the LGBT community used. Look, I'm not harming nobody. We're two consenting adults and whatnot, right? So the legal gay marriage, right? It's been legalized now based on this aqidah. You guys with me so far? It's a paradigm. This is their iman. When we talk about Islam, iman and ihsan, this is their iman. Their outlook of life is this: you can do whatever you want unless you harm. As long as you're not harming nobody, you're good to go.
Deen.
That's their aqidah. That's part of their aqidah. That's part of their deen, right? Our deen is different, right? So what I want you guys to understand is, laws are not made out of thin air. People don't just get up one morning and, hey, you know what, we're going to make this legal, make that illegal, right? It's based on their aqidah, their certain beliefs, right? For example, they have freedom of speech, freedom of this, freedom of that, in its limited capacity, by the way. And then they base their rules around these set of aqidahs that they have, right? Likewise, we also have an aqidah, right? We also have a paradigm, right? Now let's compare the two paradigms for a bit, okay? Within the current liberal capitalist system, the economic system is based upon capitalism, by the way. Capitalism basically states that there is limited resources and the amount of people are unlimited in a way. So you have limited and unlimited, you put them in a function, right? It's a bit of a problem, right? So what you have to do is you have to let people compete. Therefore, everybody has to compete in life. You have to go to 9 to 5. You have to do whatever you got to do, right? There's one opening for a job, and there are 10 applicants. Well, you guys have to compete, right? So you have to compete for the resources. Now, capitalism tries to solve this problem by, it doesn't really solve it, by the way, by saying that you need to, since we have it limited and unlimited, we have to increase the GDP. We have to increase the gross production and services within a country, right? Therefore, there's a lot of emphasis on increasing GDP. What's this country's GDP? What's that country's GDP, right? Now, what it's doing essentially is it's getting people to compete against each other, right? And on top of that, what it's doing is it's not really looking after the needs of the people. And Canada is an exception to that, by the way. America is pretty much capitalist, right? Canada, it's a bit of capitalist mixed with socialist, try to give us free housing, free health care, this and that. So they took some aspects of socialism, some aspects of capitalism, but whatnot, try to mix, make its own biryani, and came up with what we have today, right? Now, this is their paradigm. And since you compete to do whatever you want, right, what it does is it makes the rich richer and poorer poorer, because it also brought in interest and many other aspects, right, of the economy. Interest, it would turn into a long discussion if I was to get into it, right? But basically, interest enabled, it enabled the rich to get richer and poor to get poorer. On top of that, there is taxes as well. There are many other aspects, right? And poverty, it is a problem, but their objective is not to eradicate or get rid of poverty, right? Whereas in the Islamic paradigm, getting rid of poverty is one of the objectives. This is why Ali radiallahu anhu said, if poverty was a man, I would kill it. If he was a man, if it can come into a form of man, I would kill it, right? Therefore, the Islamic objective, right, of getting rid of poverty, it's one of the objectives. It's one of the Islamic objective for its economic system is to get rid of poor people. Therefore, أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمَ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. Have you seen the person who rejected the deen? Right? Scholars differ on what deen is, right? But nonetheless, that difference of opinion is not that big of a deal. It has the same meaning either way, if you were to take it as the day of Qiyamah or you were to take it as literal deen, right? The scholars say, the Quran says, have you seen the person who's rejected the deen? Right? As in the day of Qiyamah, the day of accountability. That whole Surah Ma'un, it's all about accountability. And what is it holding you to account to? It's looking after the weak of society. Look, or who are the weakest people in society? It is the people who don't have food, the homeless people who don't have food. It is the orphans, right? Those guys are the weakest in society. And Allah is saying, have you seen the guy who's lied? Have you seen the guy who's rejected, who claims to, be part of, believe in the deen but rejected it? Or believe in the day of Qiyamah but rejected it? This person who claims this, he's actually a liar. You know why he's a liar? Here are the characteristics. He doesn't encourage feeding people, by the way. It doesn't say feeding people. The surah does not say he does not feed people. The surah says he does not encourage the feeding of the poor. There's a difference. Because when you encourage people to feed, that's you taking on the responsibility and you're going out to encourage society to look after the poor. Whereas if you go ahead.
Yeah, but he doesn't even care. He doesn't even encourage it, let alone do it.
Well, I was trying to make a different point. Quran could have said he does not feed the poor, right? Well, if he does not feed the poor, that's very personal, right? That's about me doing it. Oh, I'm feeding the poor. That's it. It's personal. No, the Quran says this person does not even encourage the feeding of the poor.
Because we encourage good and prevent bad.
Yeah, exactly. We're the best of nations because we encourage good and forbid evil. It has to do with society. It is not enough for a Muslim to be pious, to go to the masjid, to give his zakah to Islamic Relief every year, right? And think he's good to go in a godless society. Everybody around us is sinning. Everybody around us is transgressing amongst each other. Everybody's, taking advantage of the other person. And I myself, alhamdulillah, I got my thobe and my topi and I go to the masjid and I give my zakat to Islamic Relief. I got my miswak and I'm a good person. I want to go to Jannah. Oh man, Allah is going to hold you to account. This surah is all about accountability. Therefore, the person who's rejected the day of Qiyamah. Have you seen the person who's rejected the day of the Qiyamah? What are his characteristics? These are the characteristics. This person doesn't believe in Qiyamah. You guys with me so far?
Yeah.
So I forget where I was going with this. Oh yeah, so I was talking about, the paradigm. The Islamic paradigm is to get rid of poverty, right? It does this through different mechanisms, right? One of them is zakah, right? Now, I remember having this discussion with a friend of mine on Telegram some time back. He got upset with me actually because I shared a video. It was a small Instagram video, right? And there's so much you can say in an Instagram video, right? So I shared this video and he was talking about, the person in the video was talking about how zakah will get rid of poverty, right? Well, zakah is not the only mechanism. There are other mechanisms that Islam provides. And he got upset. He's like, bro, what are you talking about? Here's a book, read a book on zakah, because zakah can only be taken from Muslims and given to Muslims. Well, that's true. But you got to understand the limitations. Firstly, if when zakah is implemented, it's not just taking zakah and giving to the people. Zakah is implemented in a holistic society with Islamic law, with this vision, with this paradigm in mind, right? And historically speaking, if Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, if they were living in a Muslim society, they would most likely be Muslims, by the way. They would most likely be Muslims. Because Islam, the way Islam even spread, right? There's actually an article on this as well. Islam did not spread, unlike, popular opinion, right? People believe Islam was spread by the sword. No, it wasn't spread by the sword. It was spread through different means. One of them trade, right? One of them was marriage, right? Different ways Islam spread, right? So there would have been incentives for Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk to become Muslim within an Islamic system. So they would most likely be Muslim. They would most likely give zakah. If they wouldn't give zakah, they would give jizya. If they wouldn't give jizya, okay, there are other ways you can look after the non-Muslims. So the Islamic paradigm, the way it gets rid of poverty is through zakah, through getting rid of riba. There's no riba in Islam, right? The currency we would use, it would not be paper currency. It would not deflate. It would not inflate, right? Today, $1 worth today, next year it's not going to be a dollar. It's going to be less than $1. About 10% or so. I can't recall exactly. It goes down by 10% or something like that every year. So $1 today will be worth 90 cents next year, and then $1 next year will be worth 90 that next year. So inflation is a problem, right? Islam does not like inflation. Islam actually, the resources that you find within a land, right? Islam would. You see, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in a hadith, he says more or less to the effect that people have rights. They share rights in 3 things. I'm paraphrasing the hadith, right? In water, in fire, and grasslands. As in, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is talking about natural resources, right? In a Muslim country, under an Islamic system, any resources that you find, it would not be permitted to privatize those resources. What I mean by that is, look, today's time, when I was in South Africa has abundance of coal, and abundance of natural resources. One of them is coal, right? There are American companies that are extracting coal and exporting them back home.
Yeah, I remember you talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing that. And our best coal comes from South Africa, one of the best, right? On top of that, the best quality that they find there, they actually export. And then the cheaper version, not so good, they leave it for the people, right? For the local people. On top of that, they barely get electricity, They have something called load shedding, right?
Yeah.
In an Islamic system, this would not be allowed. In an Islamic system, the government would take the resources, sell it, right? Get the money, and then make sure the money goes to the poor. The Islamic system looks after the basic needs of humanity, which is shelter, food, and education. Right? If you have these 3 things, you're good to go, right? So that's what Islamic paradigm does. It looks after the needs of the poor people's need to eat, their need to education, their need to shelter. Whereas in the current system that we're living in, you and I have to compete. We have to go get a job and make sure we climb the ranks to get higher salaries so we can go and pay rent. And the minute you lose that job, what happens? Voila.
Yeah.
You're done.
You're done. Your house might be taken away, right? It will cause stress. What do you do when you're stressed out? Well, it's going to have an impact on your relationship with your family. And so socially, it would have negative impact on your family and your kids, right? On top of that, if you have stress, there is direct linkage between health issues and stress. So when you're stressed out, you have health issues, which causes stress on the medical system, right? So all of these issues in society, because the paradigm wasn't right. The Islamic paradigm is completely different. It aims to abolish poverty. Now, let's talk about your question now. I hope you guys get this.
Yeah.
I know it's a bit too long, right? But nonetheless, now let's talk about cutting of the hand. You mentioned cutting of the hand. Look, in a system, in a government where your needs are taken care of, where you don't have the need. There's no need for you to go out and steal. There's no need for you to go out and steal anymore. Your shelter is looked after. Your need to eat, it's looked after. Your need for education is looked after, right? Therefore, in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, when there was a famine, right, the hudud for cutting off the hand was suspended for a bit, because now there's a need to steal. The government could not provide for the people's basic necessities. Now there was a halt on chopping off hands and stuff. But when there is no need for you to steal, and you go out and steal, you deprive people from their own possessions, right? You're a bad person. You're a bad person, yes or no?
Yeah.
What do you guys think of that?
Yeah.
And you need to be stopped. Now let me ask you guys a question. If the punishment for stealing is to chop hand, how many people do you think would steal?
Like none.
Maybe once, and then when the people see the hand getting cut, they will never do
Therefore,
it.
it's in public. The chopping of the hand is in public, so people see it. There's no need for you to steal. The government is looking after you. Because that's the whole
Like
Islamic.
everything's provided to you, so there's no point.
So you're just being greedy, taking more than what you need.
Exactly.
That's
No.
just desires coming out.
Exactly. Now here's the other thing. Now we're talking about paradigms and whatnot, right? And we're talking about aqidah and stuff. Let me ask you guys a question, okay? The current modern system, they say it's unjust because of the paradigm and the background that they're coming from, the perspective they're coming from. And in their perspective, they don't believe in the hereafter. Now, a person who's stealing, he gets his hand chopped off. Do you think he's going to be punished in the hereafter?
No.
We believe in the hereafter, guys. When we believe in the hereafter, if you and I get away with stealing in this dunya,
And
you have to go in Jahannam and you got to pay up for it. Now let me ask you guys a question. What's better? To get your hand chopped off for 60 years or to burn for a very long time in Jahannam?
get your hand cut
Yeah.
off first.
Now let me ask you guys a question. Chopping of the hand, is that a form of mercy or is that oppression?
Mercy.
Like before this, I actually looked at it like a form of oppression.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't needed, but like after looking at all the facts, fact checking,
Mm-hmm.
like you realize like it's doing the person a favor, you know?
Exactly. And that's how I look at it. I do not think the Islamic system is oppressive at all. Like, what's so oppressive about when people are talking about Islamic system being oppressive, they don't know what they're talking about. They haven't done their research. And they're so used to living their modern life, the system that they're so used to, they're so comfortable in it, and they can't comprehend anything beyond that, right? It's so as if you're asking a fish to define what is wet. A fish cannot define what's wet because it lives in wet. In order for it to define wet, it needs to go experience dry. When it experiences dry, it can come back and tell you, hey man, that's dry, this is wet. So when people talk about, oh, Islamic system is barbaric, it's this and that, well, go live in it first and then come back. You know, there is an academic who is actually a lawyer. He's not a lawyer. I think he teaches law and society, something like that, at, I believe, Yale. I believe it's Yale or Georgetown, either one of the Ivy League schools in America. He's a Christian, by the way. His name is Awal Halaq, right? He says he would rather live under an Islamic state than the current system. And he's not even Muslim, by the way. He's not even Muslim. Well, there's some who try to say that he is secretly Muslim or whatnot, but he hasn't come out and said he hasn't come out and declared Shahada, so we can't really treat him as a Muslim yet, you know.
Yeah.
But nonetheless,
Hopefully he becomes one.
I accept. But I think people who say Islamic system is barbaric, it's unjust. Well, this is one perspective, right? This is one way to answer the question. To take a deep dive into the paradigm of Islam and the aqidah and why laws are like that, where they're coming from and whatnot. And the other thing is, okay, what is fair? What is right and what is wrong? Who are you to decide? With your limited knowledge and limited experience, how can you determine what's right and wrong? Right? So it goes back to, you have to anchor. Like, what do you mean by right and wrong? Anchor it into something objective. Right? What might be right to you might not be right to somebody else, unless you have a third party who is not biased, who is all-knowing, all-wise. He will tell you this is right, that's wrong. Right? Otherwise, you and I can keep debating till the end of Qiyamah or whatever. This is right, this is wrong. If we take away Allah out of the picture, of right and wrong and moral, what's wrong and what's right. Okay. So, what do you guys think?
That's like, wow, you know?
Mind blowing, eh? Yeah, man.
So, another question we have.
Okay.
We're on the topic of the society thinking Islam is barbaric. Like, that's what you just mentioned, but like, we look at it from a different angle. What if Islamic laws were implemented in society today? As like the society's laws, that's gone, by, out of the picture. And then Islamic laws, like, you know, the Islamic Sharia and like prohibited, halal, haram, that stuff. If that was in today's time, what would be the outcome? Would society change for the best or change for the worst?
It definitely will be better, a lot better. Given that, okay, the Islamic system needs to be implemented holistically. We cannot partially implement the Islamic system.
Yeah.
If you and I partially implement it, see, it's not a source of law. And this is what most people don't get. You know, people think, oh, all these Muslim countries are actually Muslim countries are implementing Sharia. No, in actuality, Sharia is just a source of law amongst many other laws. For example, Pakistan. Let's take Pakistan as an example, right? It is a democracy, an Islamic democracy, which doesn't make sense. It's a contradiction, by the way. In a democracy, you take the right to rule from anybody and everybody and give it to the people, right? Whereas within the Islamic tradition, إِنِ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. Allah has mentioned this in the Quran many times. The right to legislate, it's the sovereignty belongs only to Allah, nobody else. إِنِ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. And it's on the same girdan as La ilaha illallah. إِنِ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. So nobody has the right to legislate. Now they will talk about, no, in the Constitution, it's a different discussion, but even the Constitution, the reason why you have, see, they would often argue, oh look, within the Pakistani Constitution, which changed, by the way, it was an identical constitution of British Constitution. It was literally, when Pakistan started off, they literally copy and pasted British Constitution, and they called themselves the Islamic whatever Republic of Pakistan, right? Even till today, the legal system is the common law. The legal system is the common law, right? Which is inherited from the British, right? On top of that, Islamic law is pretty much limited to family law, inheritance. When it comes to criminal law, not that much, right? Even if they were to put in some aspects of Sharia here and there, they would wrap it around common law. The need to give notice, the need for this and the need for that, as in, like, you know, the judge has to give the plaintiff has to give the defendant notice within certain days, or by email, by mail, by this and that. It's all wrapped around this, right? Nonetheless, going back to what I was saying earlier. Oh yeah, so even the Muslim countries today, right? They're not implementing Islam. Because again, I mentioned Islam is a paradigm, it's not a source of law. Pakistan, for example, they have Sharia law, quote-unquote Sharia law, some aspects of Sharia law. Not everybody pays jizya. There's no zakah implemented. Pakistan does not take zakah, except for corporations who have an interest account. Think about that. That's silly. Okay.
They're doing something haram to do something.
Yeah. They take zakah from the corporations on their interest. So they take 2.5% of their interest.
That's the equivalent of saying Bismillah before eating pig.
Exactly. That's what it is. But unfortunately, like, you know, people don't fully comprehend that. And they think that these countries are Muslim, they're Islamic countries. Not really. Islam is just a source of law amongst many other laws. It is just a source of law, right? Therefore, you cannot partially implement Islam, right? You have to implement Islam fully, because it's a paradigm. You cannot cut off people's hand without providing the needs. If you're looking after their needs, if you're looking after their basic necessities, now they go out and steal. Now you can implement the Sharia law, right? But you can't do that with, like, you know, I'm just going to chop off hands.
So in today's time, how would you start to bring the Sharia laws and the Sharia into this? How would you start?
Go ahead.
Because it's gotten so complicated. I think that if we don't start it to bring it now, then it won't ever come. Because it's just going to keep getting more complicated.
Since the abolishment of the Ottoman Caliphate, right? The Khilafah, for the past 100 years, over 102 years or so, right? 1924 when it was fully abolished, right? Some would say 1909, but formally it was abolished in 1924, right? There have been many movements, and pretty much all the Islamic movements have been trying to bring it back in one way or one shape or another, right? One of the issues is look, number one, many movements also try to climb the ranks from within the system and try to bring it back. Like, I'm gonna go become a politician and this and that.
President, and then it'll be easier.
Yeah, that didn't work. It did not work. It happened in Egypt. It didn't work. Some people try to work outside of the systems. I don't want to mention some of those groups because some of those groups are prescribed, okay? So, it didn't work either, right? People try different things. It didn't work. Because if you want to really bring it back, there's only one way. And that way is the methodology of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The way he brought it back, that's the only way of bringing it back. There's no other way, because he was divinely guided. He was living in a society where there was darkness upon darkness upon darkness, right? Look, what's interesting about Islam is people often think that we just have to affirm the belief in Allah and the belief in the Prophet Muhammad and we're good to go. No, that's incorrect. Before you can affirm the existence of Allah and you take Him as Ilah, you have to do rejection. You have to do nahi, you have to reject something. You have to do kufr. Before you do Islam, before you become a mu'min, you have to do kufr. It's in the Quran. After Ayatul Kursi, Allah says, لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي ومن يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله. Before Iman Billah, you have to do kufr and ta'bud. You have to do kufr and ta'bud. Therefore, when you say the kalima, La ilaha illallah, right? And this is one of the problems, that we think that we can be Muslims just by affirming, no, you have to reject everything other than Islam. Then you're a proper Muslim.
You can't just be like 50 this, 50 that. You gotta
Exactly.
be above
I
100.
like liberalism, but I also like Islam. So just take like 70% of Islam and 30% of it.
It doesn't work like that, right? And some people try to do that, some people try to do this, some people try that, some people try this. It didn't work, right? The only methodology of bringing back Islam is upon the methodology of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And one of the things the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did in his first years, right? He did da'wah. That's what we have to start with. In private, you have to build a team. That's what he did. He built a very strong team. When he had a strong team, when he did the tazkiyah, when he cleaned all taghut, and Islam came into their hearts, then they took the da'wah to the public space, right? And then from there, this is the methodology, but this is one way of looking. It's much more detailed, right? One of the problems with most of the movement up till now is that they have been doing whatever they can without strategic thinking, without proper planning, without setting goals, without setting a timeline, without a vision. Some of these movements, they don't even have a vision. Okay, we'll just do whatever here, we'll do whatever, and then we'll just add it to the pool of goodness, and inshallah. Like, imagine if I was to ask you guys, hey guys, let's build a building, right?
No plan, no nothing.
No planning, no.
We'll just add brick after brick and see where it goes.
Not even
can't
brick
just
after
wing
brick.
it.
We'll just get, the electrician will come in tomorrow and he'll do a little bit of wiring, and then the plumber will come and he'll do a little bit of plumbing, and that guy, this guy will come, that guy will come. It's not going to work.
You can't just wing everything.
Exactly, right. So if you want to bring Islamic system back to governance, right? Well, it doesn't have to be here, by the way. We're not talking. Let's be clear on that, right? Mm-hmm. We don't want this here in Canada and North America. Leave the North American countries as is. Okay, leave the Western countries as is. Firstly, what we need to understand is when we want to implement the system, it has to be in our lands, right? It has to be in our lands. Okay, it's not going to be here. Leave the people here. Leave them alone for a bit. Let them do their thing, and we have to go and make changes within our own lands, right?
Yeah, fix our own land.
Fix our own houses, right? It's like we have a plumbing issue in our house, and we went to the neighbor's house for a bit, and we're not going to go stay there forever, right? We're in the neighbor's house. We're going to fix up. Once our house is fixed up, we'll go back, right?
It's
Then-
like how Elon Musk, he's trying to go to Mars, right? But before we go to Mars, before we go to a new planet,
Mhm.
we gotta fix our problems here on Earth first.
Mm.
So.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So what was I saying earlier? Oh yeah. So this needs to be back in our lands. Number one. Number two, the first thing we need to do is desecularize. What the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did was desecularize the Sahaba. So he got rid of whatever beliefs they had, the tazkiyah, and then brought about the Islamic framework, the Islamic way of thinking. That's what we got to do first. Build institutions. There has to be grassroots levels of work. You have to build institutions, build educational system and whatnot, but it has to be with a vision, right? A has to lead to B, B has to lead to C, C has to lead to D, and all the way to Z, right? What we're doing today is I'm just going to do B. The other group will come on, I'm just going to do H. How is that going to lead to Z? Well, I don't know.
Someone will do
Not my
that.
problem.
This is not a serious way of thinking about Islamic civilization. A serious person would have a plan with milestones, with evaluations, right? Is this working? Am I at the right milestone right now? Okay, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? How can I improve on this, right? This is what you call a serious way of thinking about bringing back the Islamic civilization, right? And unfortunately, we don't have many people doing that. And we have to work in a jama'ah, by the way. You and I cannot go out and individually do whatever. I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna.
We
go
have
do
to get a strong group.
You have
together.
to. You have to build a team, and that was Team Sahaba. This is what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did. He built Team Sahaba, right? So we have to build a team. That team has to have a vision and a mission. With that vision and mission, you have, checkpoints. Okay, we have to get milestones. We have to get here. We have to get there by this year. There has to be a deadline, a timeline, right? If I do not, I'm going to implement this strategy, right? If it does not work within so many years, then I got to change up my strategy. Something's not working right. You know what's interesting in the Quran? Allah says, more or less to the effect. I'll read the Arabic actually. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُم فِي الْأَرْضِ كَمَا اسْتَخْلَفَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. Right? Allah promises a victory to the Muslims who do righteous deed, as in it doesn't mean you just go do salah and zakah, right? You do all that, whatever is required, you do it, right? But what's interesting is Allah says, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Allah could have said, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Right? Jar majroor here, minkum, the scholars say it's an indication when you say minkum, from you. I'm going to bring, Allah promises victory to a group of people from you as long as you meet the criteria, right? Scholars say this is an indication that if you were to strive in the path of Allah and do what needs to be done, right, this will come about within one generation because of the minkum here. You guys with me? Ibn Khaldun rahimahullah, he also says that the conditions for a victory is within one generation, right? If you look at any movement, most of the movements, they accomplish their goal within one generation. Nelson Mandela, right, within one generation. You look at the feminists, within one generation they brought about change, right? Any movement, you can go, let's look at the bad movements too, right? Just for the sake of analysis, right? Even the Zionist movement, they brought about whatever within one generation, right? Even Nazi Germany, they flipped Germany around. I'm not saying they're good. They're bad people.
Within
They've done that,
67 years.
Within 40, 60 years, right? That's about a generation. So we need to have a deadline. We need to be serious about this. We need to do it exactly how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did. We need to bring about awareness and the need and the want for people to do this. And it has to be done peacefully. The reason why it needs to be done peacefully is this is what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did. If people don't want Islam, right? You don't want Islam.
Can't force it.
You can't force it. However,
Not everyone can be guided.
exactly. But however, when we get there, people would want to join Islam. That's why don't force people. We're here peacefully. We want Islam. Let us implement it.
When they see us implement it and they see the system, they'll automatically just come.
Therefore, إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا. When the victory, the help of Allah arrives, right? When it arrived, right? You'll see people coming to Islam in large armies, right? They will just rush to Islam because now they see Islam as what it is, right? Therefore, there was a Bedouin who came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, right? He said, "We brought Iman," right? قالت الأعراب آمنا, right? The Quran says, no, you have not brought Iman yet. You have brought Islam. You have submitted now, because that's a trend. Islam is like the next big hype, you know. But after the conquest of Makkah, everybody's entering Islam because it's the next big thing, and people don't want to miss it, right? And this is how most people are. Most people are not logical. Most people are emotional, right? When they see Islam, and when you showcase it, and you show the people how beautiful it is, they will want it, right? So people don't want this. You know, when Musa bin Umair who was sent to, at the time, before Medina, you know, before Islam was established, it was called Yathrib, right? When he was sent there, we don't call it Yathrib anymore, we call it Medina, right? Musa bin Umair he was giving da'wah, and he was giving da'wah to one of the elites as well. And that's the other thing we got to do as well. We have to give da'wah to the elites, right? That's why there's a whole blueprint. Inshallah, we can talk about that later, right? How to bring about Islam. It's another podcast on its own, to be honest, right? But nonetheless, what did I say? Musa bin Umair, he said, the guy got upset. He's like, yo, what are you doing? Get out of here. He said, let me talk to you for a second. Let me tell you what Islam is. If you like it, okay. If you don't like it, I'm going to leave, right? What is Musa bin Umair going to do if he doesn't want to accept Islam? Force him? No, there's no forcing him. There will be somebody else. There will be some people who will give nusrah. There will be some person, some group of elites, the group of people who would want Islam. And when you implement Islam and you show the justice of Islam and you show how beautiful Islam is, people would automatically want to come to Islam. You guys with me?
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
So with that, that's all our questions. We had a few more, but mostly when we asked the first one, you covered them all.
Yeah.
In the thing. You could cover like 2-3 questions.
Alhamdulillah. I'm glad we had this discussion. It's really needed in today's time, you know. Especially, look, we grew up in a time when people could not openly speak because of the events, whatever happened, and the scholars and our teachers could not openly speak. So we grew up, you know, in a different way, thinking about Islam as a religion rather than a deen, right? But mashallah, you guys, the Gen Zs and the next generation, mashallah, you guys are so politically aware and active as well. I think social media did that to you guys, right? From a young age, you guys are thinking, you know...
big picture.
Yeah. And I think, inshallah, you guys, the Gen Zs and the next generation, inshallah, you guys are the one who are going to bring back Islam, inshallah. To its might, to its glory days, inshallah. You know, it was the youth who took away... Well, there were many aspects to the downfall of the Islamic civilization, not just one, right? But you could say towards the end it was the young Turks, the youth of the time, that kind of...
had different desires, because the youth mostly have different desires, and that took them away.
Exactly. They were they looked up to the Western lifestyle, right? The way they were living, and they were trying to imitate the West, right? And what had happened was it led to the downfall, right? There were many other issues, by the way. The downfall of the Islamic civilization actually started way before 1924, 1909. It was actually before the last Khalifa, Sultan Abdul Hamid, before he came into place, into power. Islamic civilization was already at a decline. Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Sufi, he dates it back to 1801 or 1802, something like that.
200 years.
Yeah, prior to the 124 years or so, right? Prior to the actual demolition, right? One of the reasons how they got in, or one of the downfalls or the pitfalls, were they took loans on interest, and then it is what it is. The rest is history, inshallah. I'm optimistic because in the hadith, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he describes the stages of the ummah. He says the prophethood would remain amongst us as long as Allah wills. After that, Khulafa Rashidun. After that, biting kingship, and there's khair in it, by the way. In a different hadith, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says there's khair in it. And then there will be a kingship that would be oppressive, and that's the time we're in right now, the oppressive kingship, right? And then it would come back to Khilafa ala minhaj nubuwah, the Khilafa upon the methodology of the prophets, right? And inshallah, that's the next transition. And inshallah, it will be this generation to get us there, inshallah. With that being said, Allah accept what has been said. Whatever was right was from Allah. Whatever was wrong was from my own weakness and from my own not having enough knowledge. Allah grant us the understanding. Jazakumullah for organizing this. It was nice talking to you guys.
Yeah.
Jazakumullah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.